Hi, we're here today with Robert K. Fitz, baseball historian, curatorial consultant for the National Baseball Hall of Fame, and author of 11 books on Japanese baseball, including Issei, the story of the first Japanese-American baseball players, Banzai Babe Ruth, Mashi, the unfulfilled baseball dreams of Masanori Murakami, and the first Japanese major leaguer. And he is the co-editor of Nichibei Yakyu, U.S. Tours of Japan, volumes 1 and 2. How are you today?
Thanks very much, John. Pleasure to be here.
Now, you've written 11 books on Japanese baseball. How did you become interested in the subject?
I was always a baseball fan from the time I was a little kid. American baseball, of course. But in 1993, my wife was transferred to Japan. And she went over a couple weeks before I did. And when I arrived, I had just survived a 14-hour flight. I don't think I slept a wink. I was exhausted. Get into the hotel room, and my wife says, "Oh, good, you're here. We have tickets to a baseball game, and it starts in 20 minutes. You get ready." So we jump on the Tokyo subway. We go to Meiji Jingu Stadium. I'm exhausted. I almost don't want to be there. And we visit the stadium, and we see the Hanshin Tigers versus the Occult Swallows. And people who know Japanese baseball know that Hanshin Tigers fans aren't crazy. You go in there and there's trumpets blaring, there's drums being pounded, there's flags waving, the fans are singing and chanting in unison, and the whole stadium is shaking. The whole stadium is just shaking. And I had never seen anything like that at a baseball game before. And from that moment I fell in love with Japanese baseball. And I've been a fan ever since. It's been 30-some years now.
How did this particular book, In the Japanese Ballpark, come about?
So for the last 20 years, I've been writing about the history of Japanese baseball. And then about 2 years ago, I'm in Japan. It's a really hot night, and I'm watching a game. And in Japan, when you want a beer, you don't go up to the mezzanine and stand in line. Instead, there's a young lady who are called beer girls, dressed in these bright costumes, and they come to you in the stands. They have cakes on their back, and they pour you a nice cold draft beer. So I get my beer, and I'm enjoying it. Like I said, it's a really hot night. And throughout the game, I'm watching this young lady who served me my beer, and I see her jogging up and down the stadium steps all game long. And it's, like I said, 98 degrees. And I'm thinking, my God, what a job. This is incredible. And then I started thinking about, what is it like to be her? I mean, does she go home absolutely exhausted? How does she prepare to do this? And then I realized that even though I'd written 10 books about the history of Japanese baseball, I knew nothing about how you put on a baseball game today. I didn't know anything about the mascots, about the family cheerleaders. I didn't know anything about the front office or the umpires or the groundskeepers. So I thought, this is an interesting idea for a book. So I went out and I found about 30 people involved in Japanese professional baseball, all the way from a former commissioner and a current team owner, all the way down to an usher and, of course, a beer girl. And I interviewed them and asked them about, what is your day like? What do you do in Japanese baseball? And how does that differ from Major League Baseball? So one of the things I tried to get were about half Americans who worked in Japanese baseball and half Japanese who worked in Japanese baseball but had experience with American baseball. So they could talk about the differences between baseball and the two cultures. And that way we're not just talking about baseball. We're also talking about Japanese culture, American culture, the differences, and more often than that, actually the similarities between the two cultures. Right? So when I interviewed these people, we did it usually over Zoom. We recorded them, we did transcripts, and then I edited the transcripts to make into narratives. So the idea when you read my book is that each chapter is an interview with someone, but I've taken my questions out. So it sounds like they're telling their story, like you're sitting there over a beer, and they're like, "Let me tell you about Japanese baseball." And they're giving you the inside scoop, the behind-the-scenes look at the game that you won't get anywhere else.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about the origins of baseball in Japan?
Sure. Now, a lot of people think that baseball was brought over after World War II, but that's completely wrong. Japanese baseball has almost as long a history as American baseball. The first known games were played in 1869 in Kobe among American residents there. But only a few years later, in 1872, an American teacher came to Japan and he introduced the game to his students. All throughout the 19th century, in both Tokyo and Kobe, you had the elite prep schools and colleges playing baseball in Japan. And by 1900, it really is the national pastime of Japan. It surpasses all the other Japanese sports. And it just grew. In the teens and 20s and 30s, you had tens of thousands of fans coming out to watch college and high school baseball. But they actually didn't have a pro league until the 1930s, when they brought Babe Ruth and a group of major leaguers over to Japan. Yes, I wrote a book about it called Bonsai Babe Ruth. And the excitement surrounding Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and these other all-stars came to Japan showed the passion of the Japanese fans for baseball. And they realized we have enough interest here now to have a professional league.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So, what are some of the challenges that? Oh no! What are the fundamental differences in the way baseball is played in Japan versus the U.S.?
Sure.
In that?
Now, Japanese baseball, just like American baseball, has changed a lot over time. Right now, the games are closer than they've ever been. Japanese baseball in the 60s and 70s was a really different animal. It was played a very conservative game, very base to base, and quite honestly, a very boring game. Games would take hours upon hours. Now, I find Japanese baseball to be very exciting. The players take chances. But there are still fundamental differences. In Japan, they basically play what's known as small ball. That's the idea of moving runners around the diamond on multiple hits, bunts, hitting behind the runners, stolen bases, to basically score one run at a time. And as a result, the games are usually 2 to 3, 3 to 4 in Japan. Now, in Major League Baseball, we now play what we call power ball. You know, the most famous slugger is Aaron Judge, who swings completely up in the air, trying to get under the ball and knock it out of the park every single swing. And American baseball, and a lot of fans like me, don't really enjoy it that much. It seems to be home run or strikeout. Japanese baseball is a lot more like the old-fashioned baseball. Lots of hits and runs, singles, really tight, exciting games.
Gotcha. And what are some of the challenges that non-native players face when they're playing in Japan?
Well, there's a lot of challenges for a non-native player, foreign player in Japan. The biggest one is the language barrier. I mean, even if you go in there with the right attitude of wanting to adapt to Japanese culture, wanting to do all the different training exercises that Japanese do that Americans don't, and you have to learn all this, it's very difficult to have to go through a interpreter all the time, because a lot of times you just can't hang out with your teammates. You can't have those casual conversations that make playing a team sport, lots of fun. So I think that's the most difficult thing. And the rest of it, it's still baseball. A professional athlete can adapt to the different styles of the game. That's why they're professionals.
Right.
Yeah.
And can you talk a bit about how Japanese baseball fans and how they compare to their American counterparts? And what is like Oendan?
Well, the Japanese fans are what makes Japanese baseball so amazing and so much fun. So I like to say that American baseball fans go to a game to watch a baseball game and to hang out with their friends. And Japanese fans go to a game to participate in the game. So the Japanese fans, well, let's start with Oendan. That is the organized cheering group that sit in the outfield, and they cheer for their batters. They're not allowed to cheer when their team is in the field, only when they're at bat. And they have organized cheers, chants, songs for each player and when they score. And they are like conductors of a symphony, except they're conductors of the baseball fans. And so the area in the outfield, which is called Gaia, means literally outfield, but that's the people who sit out there, listen to the Oendan cheerleaders, and they participate in these group chants. And then the rest of the fans participate as they feel like it. But when it's going, the entire stadium is chanting along when they're really into it. And it's just such an amazing experience, yeah.
And what are some of the more colorful mascots?
Oh, I love the mascots in Japan. So every team has a mascot. Now in the United States, every team also has a mascot, but most baseball fans couldn't name more than 3 or 4 of them. All right. In Japan, the mascots are celebrities. You can go to any of the home shops and buy stuffed animals and T-shirts and keychains, and when they walk through on the field, people go crazy. So that's the first thing, is how important they are. The other thing is American mascots. The big ones, who mostly are in the NBA, do athletic things. They do slam junks. They climb up ladders and jump off. They do all sorts of crazy entertainment things. Well, the primary aspect of a Japanese mascot is cuteness, kawaii, right? And so there is one of the most famous mascots. I'll talk about a few, but one of them is a Yokohama hamster.
Okay.
All right, think about that. He's a mascot for a baseball team, and he's a hamster. It's absolutely ridiculous, right? He's very cute. My favorite is actually the Hiroshima Carp mascot, and I think we have a picture of the two of us on the book. Yeah. So he's called Slyly. And Slyly looks an awful lot like the Philly Fanatic, the American mascot, which is not an accident because they were created by the same person in the United States. And the Carp bought the mascot rights and the costume and imported him, partly because he looked like an American mascot. Yeah.
Yes. And, okay, so you've talked about, can you talk more about some of the prominent players that have made the transition from NPB to MLB?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the very first Major League Baseball player from Japan was Masanori Murakami, who comes over in 1964 as a 20-year-old. Yes, I guess you can hold it up, right? I wrote his biography there. Right. Mashi comes over as a 20-year-old in 1964 as a minor league pitcher. And he's not expected to do anything other than practice. And it turns out he's great. And he gets called up all the way to the San Francisco Giants and becomes one of their best relief pitchers. So he pitches 2 years in the major leagues, but the Japanese team wants him back. He goes back to Japan, and the American leagues and the Japanese leagues agree that they will not poach each other's players for about, 30 years. And then in 1995, Hideo Nomo comes over. He finds a loophole in this agreement. He comes over as a free agent, basically, signs with the Dodgers, and that changes everything because all of a sudden Americans realize how good the Japanese players are, and American owners realize we want more Japanese players, and they change the rules so the Japanese players can come over. But just as importantly, when Nomo comes over, the Dodgers games are shown now on Japanese TV. So now Japanese fans, Japanese players, Japanese owners are watching Major League Baseball almost every night. And so the games start coming closer together. That old-fashioned way of playing that Japan had doesn't vanish overnight, but it rapidly changes and the two leagues come closer together. And something else you see now that we have professional Japanese players who are in their 20s, these guys are saying, I'm going to come to the major leagues because it's been my dream since I was a kid. We're now at the generation where guys grew up watching Major League Baseball from the first time they can remember. And that really changes the outlook of Japanese baseball players in the youth leagues. Yeah.
Can you talk about Shohei Ohtani and the effect he has had on MLB and how Japanese players in general are perceived in their best?
Sure. So once upon a time, before Nomo, most American fans didn't think a Japanese player was good enough to play in the major leagues. Very few people remembered Masanori Murakami from the 60s, and it was kind of laughed at that a Japanese player would be a major league star. Nomo comes, he wins Rookie of the Year, he's a great player, he changes everything. And a bunch of pitchers come over in the late 90s. And then in 2001, Ichiro Suzuki comes over. And once again, you hear this kind of nonsense about, well, Japanese batter would never make it. Well, Ichiro, of course, wins Rookie of the Year, MVP, breaks some records, right? And all of a sudden you realize that Japanese batters are also could be superstars here. So we start to see a real appreciation of Japanese players. Hideki Matsui shows that Japanese players can hit for power. Right? They get better players are coming over. And now we have Shohei Ohtani, the best player in the world, maybe the best player of all time. Certainly, it's an argument, right? Ruth or Ohtani. It's the only two choices, really. They're that good. So that really, it shatters all stereotypes about Japanese players and the Japanese leagues. Japanese leagues can produce the best player of all time, right? And so what's also interesting about Ohtani is the millions of people he's bringing to baseball. So one of the things I learned when I was writing my book and interviewing a lot of people in baseball, that one guy said, my parents know I'm in professional baseball. This is a front office man. He says, but they never asked me about my job until Shohei Ohtani played for the Dodgers. Now they watch every single game with Ohtani and they start asking me, do you have any other guys like that? And so all these people who barely had any interest in baseball before are now following both major leagues, but also the Japanese leagues. And what's fascinating to me is you would expect, with all the attention Ohtani's getting in the press and on the TV in Japan, that Japanese fans would abandon Japanese baseball and look to MLB, but they're not. Every single year you see the attendance records being broken in Japanese baseball as Ohtani gets better. So far more people are watching baseball now than ever before. And that's really, I think, an Ohtani effect there. Yeah.
Cool. In one of your interviews with Yozo Kato, who was baseball commissioner in Japan, he suggested that the U.S. and Japan should compete in a true World Series. What are your thoughts on that?
So that idea has been around since the 50s. A guy named Shiriki, who owned the Yomiuri newspapers and the Yomiuri Giants, wanted to do that. And he would invite over a major league team starting in 1953 every other year. And because it took a year to set up the tour, he would have to pick that team. Every year he was wrong. He never managed to pick the team that won the World Series to bring them over to play his Tokyo Giants. But the idea was there. And people still think maybe it's possible. Now that Japanese baseball and MLB are so much closer in ability, maybe we can do that. But I don't think it's going to happen in the near future. It costs so much money to bring a team over because you do have jet lag, so they have to come over at least a week in advance. You have to set up a stadium, you have to hire everybody. There's the feeling that there's not enough money to be made either in ticket sales or, more importantly, TV rights for that to happen. You also have to get the players' associations on both sides to agree. And most importantly, we have the World Baseball Classic now. It's coming up in March, and millions of people watch that. I don't think MLB is going to do anything to undermine that wonderful event right now. And someday in the future, maybe we'll see it, but I don't think in the near future.
How about the Olympics?
The Olympics, the Summer Olympics happen right in the middle of the baseball season. There's too much money lost to take time out. Bobby Valentine would like to see baseball added to the Winter Olympics and played in dome stadiums. But once again, it's the guy's time off. Right? When the superstars of American baseball are being paid $50 million, are you going to take a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks to get in shape off from your family to go play in the Olympics? No. You're going to enjoy your time with your family during your off season. So I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah. All right.
All right, Bill. We've been speaking to Robert K. Fitz, author of In the Japanese Ballpark, Behind the Scenes of Nippon Professional Baseball. It is published by the University of Nebraska Press and is currently in stock at Kinokuniya bookstore. Signed copies are available, but only while supplies last, and you can get your copy by clicking the link in the YouTube description box below the video. Thank you, Robert K. Fitz.
Thanks very much, Jack.
Have a great day.
You too.